All right, I'm with Al Krunji of San Lorenzo Gold. San Lorenzo is a very interesting company, not a typical venture junior mining company. And San Lorenzo recently was thrust into the spotlight just in the last few weeks with some drill results from the Salvadora project in Chile. So let's get into it. Al, it's great to meet you. How are you today?
Hey, I'm very well, Robert. Thanks. Thanks for asking.
So before we get into the results that got the market's attention and created the share price move, let's just get the background on San Lorenzo as a company and the Salvadora project. So how did the company get started? Who started it? And how did the company acquire Salvadora?
Salvadora, the property was acquired in connection with a transaction in 2016, whereby a private company merged with a CPC called Tailwind Capital to create San Lorenzo back then. The founders were Terence Walker, and myself. The properties were originally acquired through staking and subsequent staking to increase the size to what it is now, which is about 9,000 hectares or about 90 square kilometers.
Got it. Okay. And as far as I know, and watching your presentation at MIF, recently, it's basically a three-man show at San Lorenzo right now. It's Terry, you, and the CFO. What is the management team's background?
Well, Terry Walker, to start with, is a very seasoned geologist who lives in Chile, in La Serena. He's been there for 27 years. Moved there and ended up marrying a Latin girl and having kids. And so he's very comfortable in Chile, speaks Spanish, of course, and is very conversant with the way mining works in Chile. The other persons are myself as a CEO and John Ioshi as a contract CFO. So we're pretty lean and mean at this point.
And what is your background in mining or in capital markets?
Well, I've been involved in many startups in both mining and in the oil and gas sector. I would say more in oil and gas than in mining, but I've been involved in Chile since 2009, period, since 2009.
Okay. So you basically, the way I understand it at San Lorenzo is you knew Terry, the geo, and at some point in 2016, this idea came up to stake this ground, and you went ahead and did it.
Well, we have to go back in time just a little bit. I met Terry in 2010, where we were both directors of a different mining company in Chile. And then we got together to start looking at projects. The Salvadora property was initially staked in that 2009 to 2012 period. And it subsequently was part of the transaction that took it public. Terry had been in Chile for quite a while and had quite a few ideas. I had been involved, as I said earlier, in many startups, capital markets, financings, and such the like. And so we accumulated a property package that was 3 properties in total, which we still own within San Lorenzo, in fact. And Terry's favorite always was Salvadora. It exhibits some very great characteristics, including 5 different target zones that I think is too much to talk about in this conversation, but especially the Arco de Oro, Tres Amigos, and Cerro Blanco targets. And we already had drilling on our Arco de Oro way back then to show how significant a gold system Arco de Oro was. So it's been a long time, and admittedly, we have been going slower than probably we desire, but that's been due to capital constraints along the way.
Yeah, it's interesting, and that's why the company is a bit different than an average junior, in Canada, because normally a junior that got a project in a well-known and prolific porphyry belt in Chile would make a big splash and try to raise $5 or $10 million off the bat and go big. And you guys have kind of done it gradually to keep the share structure intact. And I've noticed a lot of self-funding by you, the management team. So it's a bit different, and I think investors are finally appreciating it because of the drill results. So let's talk about the drill results at Cerro Blanco. And by the way, I like the name of the target areas at Salvadora because I can even translate them with my poor Spanish. So it's White Hill, and seeing this the pictures of the White Hill, it makes sense why it's named that. So basically, the way I understand the 3-hole program that you recently completed and announced the results for at Cerro Blanco is you were doing a recon program, just doing wildcat holes to test an IP chargeability anomaly. Tell us, any more you can about the drilling at Cerro Blanco.
Sure. Cerro Blanco probably deserves a couple of minutes my explanation because it's such a significant target. So we've been wanting to drill that for quite some time, but the access into it was very difficult. So recently we bit the bullet and put an access road in there. It's approximately 7 kilometers long. And yes, we've always wanted to drill it. Ran quite a few geochem surveys with chip samples only across the property, as well as 2 lines of IP. The 2 lines of IP are east-west oriented. The one to the northernmost line is broken up in the middle because of terrain. But when you say wildcatting, it is close to wildcatting, but the locations were picked to correspond to geochemical, in other words, surface sampling. That was quite interesting. Together with IP chargeability anomalies, we identified essentially 4 of them. We drilled 3 of them. The strongest one is not drilled yet. It's actually to the east of hole 3, but we couldn't get there because of terrain issues, and we would have to spend more money to build the road down into that. But that is part of our next program. But you're indeed right that the holes are approximately half a kilometer apart, 500 meters. And so the 3 holes have really cut a swath into an area. But we're lucky indeed when you do something that's somewhat that exploratory in nature, and all 3 of the holes came back with some very significant gold returns. So we're very pleased, obviously, and I'm happy for shareholders, stakeholders that will be able to continue explore the target, I guess, bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the way you drilled Cerro Blanco. These are the first 3 holes that were ever drilled into this target area. The way you drilled it is sort of, reminiscent of how a major mining company would approach a new target: drill 500-meter step outs and just take a big whack at it and see what comes up. And I mean, basically, you hit on all 3 holes, which is unusual. Usually you're going to have a duster that's not going to find any gold or silver or copper on a new target area. So that means that this system is very large. We don't know much about it just based upon the 3 holes and the IP. But it's interesting what you said, that the strongest chargeability is still to the east and is untested. And I seem to recall that the soils get stronger to the east as well. Is that correct?
Well, that's true, but if you look at the map on the most recent press release, you'll notice that there are more than 1 band of anomalous soil values. They're quite anomalous, and of course that's what it always had us very interested in drilling there, together with the whole fact that the lithocap, and the trend in that mega porphyry belt of Chile that there's numerous deposits that are not that dissimilar to this this feature, Cerro Blanco. And of course, it's in the right area. It's just south of the El Salvador mine, which is a world-class mine. It's produced many billions of pounds of copper and about 5.5 million ounces of gold. So it's a very significant operation. And some things that are really interesting is that there's paved road access to the edge of the property. There's a high-grade road goes right through the middle of it that is maintained by the county there. And there's electric power, high voltage power right along the north edge of the river. And the river doesn't flow all year around, but it does most of the year. And then we're also only about 30 kilometers from the Porphyry smelter that is involved with the El Salvador mine. So it's a very attractive location.
Yeah, I noticed the location advantages are quite substantial at Salvadora. So it's interesting because sometimes in a porphyry system, the IP chargeability highs are showing pyrite, which most copper explorers don't really care as much for. They want chalcopyrite. But the fact is, at Cerro Blanco, it seems that the gold runs with the pyrite. So the chargeability is actually, based upon these holes to date, is showing you the gold, as well. I mean, so is based upon your conversations with Terry, is just to continue testing the chargeability anomalies at Cerro Blanco?
That's indeed correct. Your comment about the pyrite and gold being in association is very true. You will note with our last drilling program that in the last 40 meters of hole 3, we started entering into potassic alteration and an increase actually in the chalcopyrite. So our thinking today is we're in the upper portions of a system where it's more gold bearing. And as we go deeper, we expect it to transition into being more copper bearing. But to answer your question, yes, the IP is a very valuable tool. It's led us very well so far. We're very excited about testing the fourth feature, which again is immediately east of hole 3. And then continuing, there's an awful lot of room to move, of course, with only 3 holes having been done. I would also point out that we're very much lacking in the amount of IP that we have in our next phase, which is being permitted right now, and we're hiring a contractor to do it, is to shoot more IP because it seems to track so well.
So I'm looking at, so I think doing more IP on Cerro Blanco is definitely a good plan. And obviously the plan to test that target to the east is a very good plan. And I think the interpretation that you're starting to get into there in hole 3, the core of the porphyry system in the potassic alteration is, based upon the evidence, that seems correct, and the copper value is increasing is good evidence of that. But just looking at the property and the 5 different target areas, it seems like it makes sense that your porphyry is there at Cerro Blanco, and then the epithermals are to the west at the at the Arco de Oro target. So let's talk about that target. I know there's assays pending from that one. What can you tell us about that target?
Okay, well, let me start with a caveat on Cerro Blanco just before we move on. I appreciate your comments that, it appears we're getting into the core of a system. Well, that's certainly what we hope, but 40 meters of transitioning into more potassic alteration is not proof that we're there yet, but it sure is encouraging. So sorry for that caveat. I just don't want to be too misleading about we know exactly what's going on there, because being very candid, we don't quite yet. We've got 3 holes and a couple of lines of IP. But anyway, transitioning to Arco de Oro, there's 2 trends that we're very keen about, Arco de Oro and Tres Amigos, which both of which you can translate pretty easily, I'm sure. Arco de Oro has been a favorite for a long time. We started a drilling campaign there in 2016, and we've now drilled 9 holes into that. I'm sorry, excuse me, 8 holes into that. And it's evident at surface. So, it's not so hard to be a brilliant exploration geologist when artisanal miners have been going down a few, 2 to 5 meters at surface and hauling out raw ore. And the trend is pockmarked with that over its entire 5-kilometer length. So we have focused so far on what we call the Feliz Retiro trend. And every hole has indicated mineralization not only in the basic vein system, but in the surrounding wall rock as well, which was highlighted by the recent release of hole number 1 in this recent program that we did, which intersected 3 different vein systems, is what we believe. And therefore, we got a very wide intercept of pretty high-grade gold. What we don't have is a lot of control at depth. So we know that this vein system starts at surface, which is wonderful. We just don't know how deep it goes. Now, it's reasonable to assume it goes deep. So what we did was 1 hole only down into the sulfide. So we intersected that at a 300-meter depth from surface. And lo and behold, we got up to 2-ounce gold. Actually, a very, very nice intercept down there. And so this most recent hole that we just announced is still shallow, but we're eager to do a little bit more drilling by expanding both the strike and confirming at depth. And that will be part of our next program. I'd highlight that we've already confirmed 1 kilometer of strike length. We do have a couple of holes that we have to release as yet, which are probably coming within the next week. We're told by the lab that they're imminent. So we're hoping that we can show investors and stakeholders that there's a real serious system there with great mineralization, great gold values. We did in our presentation, the MIF presentation that you refer to, do a quick back of the envelope, but we've got 1 kilometer of strike of about 2.5 meters of thickness, which averages over 17 grams per ton. So that's a reasonable, if you do the math, it sure comes out to a big number. But let's continue to drill and figure out that it truly does go that deep rather than wave our hands, and also establish more strike length. And I think we have a very major system there. So
at the Arco de Oro target, you announced hole 2501, which had three wider intervals of gold, including the deepest one, 23.3 meters, grading 4.8 grams per ton gold, including 4 meters of 18 grams per ton gold. That's a very good intercept. That's impressive. So, and I appreciate the large strike extent that has been exposed by the artisanal miners, and assuming that they could only go so deep with the tools that they have at their disposal. So the core of the system is fully intact at depth in theory. Tell us about the 2 holes that are pending assay. I see there's copper results pending from hole 1, and then I think there's another 2 holes pending.
You're right. We are going to announce the copper results from hole 1 together with at least one of the next 2 holes when we get those assays. We don't have them as we speak right now. It is our intention to move towards the north and deeper, and to the south as well, to establish more strike in our additional drilling. You're asking me to tell you about the holes, but unfortunately, I just can't, because I don't have the assay results yet.
Okay. but those should be, received in the next couple of weeks, I would imagine.
Well, we were hopeful this week, actually, but it is Wednesday, and so we'll see. But very imminently, yes.
Yeah, sometimes they send the results on Fridays, I know. So we'll see about that. Okay, so let's talk about the drilling costs and maybe the plan for 2025. I mean, San Lorenzo was at 7 cents not too long ago. It's about 40 cents today. I know some warrant money came in, about 1.5 million. So that helps a lot. What is your thinking right now in terms of funding for the company and plans to spend the treasury at Salvadora in 2025?
Well, there's 2 or 3 things to be said. First of all, we have very, very low G&A. Very modest salary. I don't take any salary, but very modest salaries, and virtually all the money goes into the ground. You're right about the $1.5 million that came in from warrant exercises. Our all-in costs in the Salvadora area are $300 US per meter. Now that's drilling and water and assays and everything. So we did get $1.5 million Canadian in warrant money come in, and we would have plenty of money in the till right now to do about 2,000 meters. We did 6 holes in the last program. This would allow us to do about 9 holes. There is a discussion on what the best way to go forward is, but as we sit here today, we don't need cash. We have enough to do some additional drilling to really prove up how big this system is. And we're pretty pumped to do that. In fact, we're already initiating plans to do exactly that.
Excellent. Sometimes when companies announce good results and they have a big share price rise, they receive calls from big investors and maybe even some corporates. What can you tell us about what kind of attention you've received in the last couple of weeks?
Well, as you could well imagine, quite a bit of attention, yeah, and quite a few calls from interested parties. Both to get to know the story better and candidly to say, hey, listen, we want to raise your money. Yeah, well, we don't really need it. I don't want to send the wrong message. Mining requires money. We all know that, and $1.5 million kitty is not that much. So you have to balance, how impactful would a few more holes be versus raising some money. Right this minute, we're not thinking we're going to raise money. That's the short-term decision. But again, I just don't want to cast anything in stone when it comes to that.
Okay. And then just a couple more questions out. The Cerro Blanco first hole from 2025 is what really ignited the market attention. Does that, in your mind, make Cerro Blanco your top target area, or how are you ranking the 5 main target areas at Salvadora now?
Wow, that's a great question. And, I'd like to defer to our geologist, Terry Walker, to really answer that properly. I don't want to confuse anybody with 5 target areas, but it's clear that we're going to drill 3 target areas in this next program, and that's the 2 we've already spoken about. Arco de Oro as that epithermal system that has such great gold values, and then Cerro Blanco, obviously, which has the potential to host so many millions of tons. So obviously that needs to be explored. I'd point out that Tres Amigos, which was on our plan to drill in this last program, got sidetracked. And the reason was that we decided to drill the extra hole at Cerro Blanco, and then we decided to drill the extra hole at Arco de Oro, and we had a limited credit line, and we used that on those 6 holes. Cerro Blanco is another epithermal system that has very, very high grade copper numbers. we've reported them already, but there's an adit that goes down only about 20 meters into the ground, but the mine face there has copper values that are in excess of 15% copper. So yeah, it's a very prolific copper area there, and we would love to establish some strike length on that as well. We have such limited drilling that's happened there, so that's also high on our list. But again, I'm sorry if I'm being confusing, and I won't bother identifying the other two targets at this point.
So 3 Amigos would be the third target at this point.
Yes, because the impact could be so high. We've done so little on it, but I point out again that we've done mine face sampling, with 5 meters of well over 10% average gold. So, I'm sorry, copper, excuse me. So yes, it bears drilling because it could have significant impact as well. I'm fully cognizant that the Porphyry target has the biggest impact, but the other two are very significant as well. And I venture to say that lots of junior mining companies would love to have all 3 of those targets in their portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, this project, this property, the Salvadora property is just based upon the 5 phases of drilling and the results you've published to date, and the setting, the location, et cetera, it's definitely got my attention. I'll just leave it at that. And then final question, Al. 3-man show, website could use some improvement. What are the plans to add talent, add some new faces to the team, and maybe to upgrade the web presence?
Well, your comments are bang on the money, Robert. You're absolutely right. We've made no secret that, and in fact, during the presentation a couple of weeks ago, I met a number of people and stated publicly that we are looking to add to the team, especially a well-seasoned, known mining name that ultimately would be the person to take over from me. Where we go from that is anybody's guess right now. It's interesting how the more results you get, the more people are interested, and so I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to attract someone to the story. That is a work in progress. And so we have retained Acuity to improve our website, and that work is just beginning. So I agree that it needs some work, and I will take the brunt of that one, being the author, or not the author, but being the one who is doing that stuff now, and it's not always perfect. So yeah, we have to improve.
Yeah, but I think that as well, investors appreciate your focus on the bottom line and the costs to focus on the share structure and keep it tight. There's always a trade-off there. You could raise more, you could dilute, you could have a larger share count, and you could get nice and pretty things for that money, or you could keep it tight and run a tight ship. And as you said, you take no salary. I think that does not go unnoticed by shareholders. So Al Crunchi, San Lorenzo Gold, thank you so much for your time.
Well, you're very welcome, and thanks for taking time, Robert. I enjoyed it.
Cheers.
Thank you.